We're joined now by Gunness, a former spokesman for the UN Relief and Works Agency, and he's joining us live from London. Mr. Gunness, thank you very much for your time. You have spent time in Gaza, and our correspondent in Gaza was just telling us about the latest attack on a UN school. What goes through your mind when you hear of these attacks that are still taking place years later?
The word that springs to mind is accountability. There has to be accountability, because in the past we've seen investigations and it's led to nothing. But now we have the International Criminal Court, which has an investigation into what is going on. We have other justice mechanisms around the world which can be activated. What I would like to see is an independent, a free and a fair investigation into all of these crimes, and they are international crimes being committed on both sides. So on the Hamas side, we saw what happened on the 7th of October. We've seen what's happened since as a result of the bombardment by the Israelis. And I would like to see accountability, because in 2014, for example, we had a board of inquiry. Nothing happened. We had other examinations, other reports, and there's been no action. We now have a substantive difference. The ICC and other jurisdictions are involved, and we need to see criminal accountability. We need to see those leaders on both sides brought to book, and that will deal with extremists. And once that's happened, we need to see the moderates come forward, because make no mistake, there can only be a negotiated settlement. Military victory is simply not possible. So we have to make sure that this pause is built on, so that there is a lasting ceasefire, because for every day of bombardment that goes past, the chances of a negotiated peace settlement, Israel living in security, the Palestinians having their own state, the prospects for that recede every single day.
And about the ceasefire, how much do you think that this ceasefire alone, this 4-day ceasefire, can help people there?
Well, it can make a difference. I mean, let's be clear. 200 aid trucks per day, and is it 2 or 4 fuel trucks? That's a drop in the ocean. That's never going to be enough. So this pause, call it whatever you will, has to be turned into something permanent, because the stakes are simply too high. You've got 80% of the Gaza Strip made homeless and displaced. You've got hundreds of thousands of homes in the north completely flattened. So we have to see an extended ceasefire in which there is rapid ramping up of the humanitarian and development operation, because, you know, after 2014 operation, I think people said between 10 and 15% of the ordnance is unexploded. That has to be cleared. We have to see the rubble cleared. We have to see a massive ramping up of the effort, because, to be clear, the alternative is unthinkable. It's a massive humanitarian crisis involving 2 million people, and the potential mass displacement into Egypt, goodness knows where. And at that point, the prospects for peace and the prospect of Israel living in a secure state, frankly, falls over a cliff.
For any of this to happen, the two sides will need to further agree. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had said that he wouldn't negotiate with Hamas, yet here we are on the eve of a ceasefire and captives release, reach through intermediaries. If the two sides can get here, do you believe they can go further?
Of course I do, and we have to believe that. I mean, Mr. Netanyahu said he was going to destroy Hamas, and here we are within weeks, him negotiating with Hamas. I mean, let's get real, folks. The two sides know they have to talk to each other. And yes, of course, with the Qataris putting pressure on Hamas, with the Americans putting pressure on the Israelis, a 4-day pause can turn into a 5-day pause, during which a further 10 hostages will be released, as apparently has been agreed. This pause can be extended into something positive. The momentum of the conflict can be, the momentum can be taken out of the conflict, and that will afford an opportunity for confidence-building measures for the two sides to talk to each other, because, as I say, there can be no military victory. We have to see this hostage negotiation as something which will lead to a further negotiation, something which ultimately could perhaps lead to more substantive peace talks. That has to be the hope tonight, because the alternative is too appalling to consider. The alternative is Israel living in a state of insecurity. All of the policies since '67, build a wall around the Palestinians, oppose an apartheid system on the Palestinians, control them, that's not worked. And on the 7th of October, that genie disappeared. It was shown to be the chimera it always was. Those policies have failed to give Israel the security it craves. And by the way, on the Palestinian side, they have to realize that they can only get their state by talking to the Israelis. Israelis get security by talking to Hamas and the other side, and the Palestinian side will get a state. I think that the events of the last weeks have proven that that is, frankly, the only thing to pursue, because the alternative is just too ghastly to contemplate.
That is the former spokesman for the UN Relief and Works Agency, Gunness, joining us live from London. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.